Hello and welcome to the National Lotteries Commission podcast with me, ALDRIN SAMPEAR. So today we are going to be focusing on the NLC's diversity management policy. And of course, this is a build-up to the event that will be taking place on the 26th of May at Houghton Hotel, creating a respectful work environment. And it will come just a day after Africa Day, which is on the 25th of May, and it's quite poignant considering that when we speak about Africa, we speak about diversity, also speak about a kaleidoscope of colors, but also how do you find harmony in all of that diversity that you have around you. So to help us make sense of all of this, we are now joined by Dr. Janet Minnaar, who's the founding director of Pro Ethics. We're also joined by Shalom Bila, who is acting human capital manager at the NLC, who will also help us around the ethics policy of the NLC. So let's start off this conversation by trying to describe and identify and create a human element to the description of diversity. Dr. Janet, how do we describe diversity?
Well, Aldrin, I think the simplest way to look at it is to say that diversity is the recognition that we are not all the same. It means that we have a group of people in a workplace like the NLC who are different in respect of culture, language, age, religion, physical ability, economy, race, sexual identity, and many more things. We acknowledge in a diverse workplace that we all have different viewpoints, life experiences, characters, and attributes. And diversity asks from us as employees to be open to these differences and to accept one another.
Shalom, Dr. Minnaar speaks about different views as well, and you find that when you move into the workplace, because people look at the workplace and they think it's brick and mortar. Sure, it's brick and mortar, but the workplace is occupied by human beings with diverse backgrounds, and the company itself may have its own vision, but having to find that harmony. And the question is, how do you find unity in diversity?
Thanks, Aldrin, for that excellent question. We are fortunate as National Lotteries Commission because we have created a safe working environment where employees who come from different backgrounds, who come with a wealth of experience from different demographics, they are united behind the vision, the mission, and the values of this particular organization. And I need also to add that these particular employees, they're not only united in these particular issues that I've mentioned, but they're united in changing lives. They are inspired by the corporate strategic objectives of this particular organization. And as human capital, we saw it fit to harness, this particular potential that rests within our employees, and we embark on programs that are dedicated in unleashing, maximizing the potential of all our employees. And I think that is a nutshell in terms of what we do in enhancing the diversity of NLC employees.
Okay. So, Shalom, tell us about when a candidate comes to the NLC for the interview and the candidate is successful. What happens after that?
Aldrin, I think it is important for me to paint a picture even before the interview. Before people are interviewed, we make sure that our adverts, they penetrate all the communities within this particular country. We make sure that we target, provinces where we have colors, disabled people, white people. It does not matter. It shows that NLC in their policies, they don't discriminate. Every employee, every candidate is welcomed and shortlisted. Then after shortlisting, we make sure that we accommodate people. It doesn't matter whether they're disabled or not, but we make sure before the interview, how should you be accommodated, or what do you prefer NLC needs to do for you to be accommodated? Hence, we'll ask questions relating to, are you disabled? What kind of assistance do you need when you're going to be interviewed? Then after the interview process, we make sure that our employees, our candidates, they're given an opportunity to be inducted particularly on the diversity policy, because that's where we emphasize that NLC as an organization does not tolerate any form of discrimination. Hence, we even create a safe working environment for our disabled colleagues. It doesn't matter whether you use sign language, you are accommodated. It does not matter whether your education or social status is, but at NLC, you'll always be accommodated. Within our workforce, you'll find people from different sexual orientation. We don't matter at all. But what matters to NLC is how we use your knowledge and your experience in changing lives. And I think that is my response to your question.
I'll come back to the question around how the NLC, through its policies, is able to protect the rights of diversity. But just quickly, Dr. Yanant, so once these candidates are now successfully in the company and have been inducted, they've went through all of the induction processes and so forth, and now they work for this particular company. In this case, we'll speak about the NLC. What is it important for the NLC, for instance, to be cognizant of when we speak about promotion within the company?
Well, obviously, Aldrin, it's important for the NLC to understand and acknowledge that the policies they've adopted need to be consistently and fairly applied. And I can only commend the NLC because they have an excellently written diversity management policy. They also have an ethics and conduct policy that gives particular guidance in how do we deal with matters of dignity, of equality, of diversity. And that then gives guidance to say, this is how we treat different situations to accommodate different people.
Because the importance for me on this as well is, while people speak about diversity in terms of having people who are, let's say, of different backgrounds, the other absent part of the conversation is that not only does diversity bring about different voices within the room, but it also brings about different ideas and how to propel the company. Just quickly, Dr. Yanant, your take on that, and then I'll come.
It's in those different ideas that we find strength. And part of that is the open communication where everyone is allowed to voice an opinion, to bring a view. And we listen to that, not just to reply, but listen to understand. And that's where I think it builds our strength. And I love what Shalom said. Ultimately, how do we change lives? By making sure that internally we accept one another for who we are. And those strengths are then utilized to the maximum potential.
Okay, Shalom, your answer to that question, but also incorporating the policy that the NLC has to protect those rights of diversity and those diverse views as well.
To respond to your question, Aldrin, NLC makes sure that it creates an innovative hub where these particular ideas are shared within NLC. And there's an innovation committee which is composed of people coming from different divisions. And insistence in the composition of that particular innovation committee was to make sure that representation of people from different sexual orientations, religion, and ethnicity are accommodated. Now, the issue of making sure that NLC takes advantage of diverse views or ideas are expressed through this particular medium or platform, which is called our Innovation Hub.
Mm-hmm. What about the protection element of those rights?
The protection of those particular rights are maintained, or we ensure that they are protected by making sure that union members play a critical role in implementing this particular policy. But it goes to another level where our policy clearly indicates that managers, they have a responsibility of protecting the rights of employees. But it doesn't end there. It goes further in stating that human capital needs to create an environment where employees are not harassed or their rights are not tampered with. That's how NLC has created an organizational culture that protects the rights of all employees within the organization.
Dr. Annette, I think this also speaks then to what's at the core of our Constitution as well, the protection of human dignity and also within its diversity.
Definitely, Arjun. If one looks at our Bill of Human Rights, Section 10, it says that everyone has inherent dignity and the right to have that dignity respected and protected. And then if we look a little bit further, we see a similar provision made for in regards to equality. And it says in Section 9, just the preceding section of the Bill of Human Rights, clearly that everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. It goes on later on in that same section to say the state may not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, language, and birth. So very widely put, and that tells us it's in that framework also that the NLC then writes and develops and applies its policies.
What I find interesting with the Bill of Rights as well is when it comes to the application of the Bill of Rights, which says that it applies to all law and binds the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, and all organs of state. But does it also then apply to individual private companies, for instance, that are not organs of state?
It would, because the Constitution is our ultimate law. And should an employer, if one thinks about for example, labor laws, they all come from that. And the normal private sector company has to apply and comply with labor laws. And they're enshrined in the Constitution to say there's certain things you may not do because it would be discriminatory. So the same definitely principles are applicable to the private sector. And it's only right that it does.
Mm-hmm. So, Shalom, what I also find sometimes quite interesting is that when those provisions that are within the Constitution are not being adhered to, you only realize it as the individual once it applies to you. But it's also important to note when it applies to somebody else, to, when the red flag goes off, to say that, hey, this is a red flag. And I wonder, within the NLC and the environment that you've created, are you able to say that we have an environment where those who are brave enough to speak up would speak up on behalf of those who feel that their voices have been silenced?
We have created that particular environment. That is why I touched on the issue and the critical role that is played by the unions, because the unions are the voice of their members, and they will even communicate these particular issues via the platforms that we've created within the organization. Within the organization, we have created a forum where unions and the employer, they sit together and discuss issues relating to employees. Now, if you're not brave enough as an NLC employee to communicate your issues, you can use that particular vehicle via the union, and they will articulate those particular issues on behalf of their masses. But if you're brave enough as an NLC employee, we also give you a platform to communicate your issues directly to your manager or to HCM, particularly when it comes to diversity-related issues. That's how, as NLC, we have created that particular platform to accommodate those that are brave and even those that are not brave enough to articulate those particular issues.
What about consequence management? Because that also needs to apply.
Consequence management, I can say that NLC is one of the few organizations that excel when it comes to consequence management. It doesn't matter whether it was brought by you as an individual employee or via union. If there's any merit and an investigation dictate that an action needs to be taken against a particular manager or against a particular employee, we don't hesitate to take action. And we've done that in provinces. I can mention certain provinces that we have dismissed employees that have trampled on other employees' diversity rights. Okay, now that is proof enough that NLC does not only talk about those particular issues, but they implement and execute this particular policy, and we have a plethora of examples of executing that particular policy.
Dr. Annette, and that also then speaks to what we like to see in society, is that we have the laws that are there, we have the policies that are there, but we also want to see justice happening.
Correct. So, Aldrin, I was thinking about justice and fairness and then thought, are they different? And in a way, it is different. When I think of the Constitution, I'm thinking of justice needs to be seen to be done.
Yep.
It's a quite a well-known saying in the legal fraternity. But when it comes to the employer and the workplace, we don't only want to see justice, we want to see fairness. So any form of discrimination immediately speaks to unethical behavior because it's by its nature unfair. And being ethical is about treating others the way you would like to be treated yourself. So I do think that fairness principle is really valued within the NLC. Not only have they a very strong HCM department, but there's also their ethics office that drives similar initiatives and ensures that people can come forward to safely report without fear of discrimination or victimization any type of issue that relates to these matters.
Shalom, on the question around fairness, how do you approach a situation where you'd find that there's a potential of a toxic work environment being created because there are questions around a certain appointment which some people may argue and say that, but this doesn't meet the diversity policy that the NLC has adopted itself?
Our way of averting a toxic environment within the organization when it comes to fairness, of appointing employees, we make sure that as an NLC we live in our open door policy where we invite any NLC employee, to come to our offices and pose any question that relates to any application process or appointment. And this particular right is not only limited to employees. Unions come to our office now and then. They write to us when it comes to issues relating to appointments. And we use those particular opportunities as HCM to unpack, one, our talent management policy and how it empowers managers and executives to appoint certain officials. We also go a step further in unpacking how the recruitment and employment process of our organization is applied. But I think that the most important thing, Aldrin, for me to emphasize, transparency is entrenched and inculcated within our ecosystem by making sure that we advertise our vacancies internally and externally, and we create a fair opportunity for everyone to compete internally and externally. That's how we address the issue of fairness and avoiding a toxic environment within our entity.
Tell us quickly about the talent management policy.
Our talent management policy, it is a policy that clearly indicates how do we help managers and executives to, one, identify potential of their employees, how to unleash that particular potential, but more importantly, how to maximize that particular potential. After they've given the platform and the tools of maximizing the potential of their employees, we give them step-by-step processes of how those particular employees, they can form part and parcel of what we call a talent pipeline within the organization. And how then do we develop those particular candidates that constitute or form part of this particular pipeline? We don't want to always go outside if we believe that we do have talent within the organization. And when I say talent, I mean anyone within the organization. It does not matter your age. It does not matter your ethnic origin or your national origin. This policy says anyone with potential can be appointed and developed to occupy any position within this particular organization.
Mm-hmm. And just quickly before I go to Dr. Annette, because I'd like you to touch on this as well, is how then do you ensure that talent management policy isn't abused?
Our policies, particularly this particular policy, has parameters, and it gives each executive and each manager parameters within which they need to apply a particular step. And HCM is there to guide any line manager in terms of how they can take advantage of this particular policy.
Dr. Annette, I have to say that I really love the idea of having a talent management policy. I hope that all companies out there also have talent management policies, because it also speaks to the core of within the environment that you've already created in the workspace, there's talent that you are also harnessing. But then there's the flip side of it as well, and that is the possibility of such a policy being abused. What would your advice be?
I always go back to transparency. You know, if one is engaging an employee to say, I've identified certain talent, certain possibility, and I want to develop this person, make them part of the talent pipeline, I love that. I need to be able to explain why is it so that Aldrin qualifies but Janet doesn't qualify. So all about the openness about that. And I love the fact that we look after our employees. We take care of one another, and it's part of that process where someone perhaps who's appointed, and I've heard so many of such lovely stories, perhaps starts working as support staff, perhaps as a tea lady, and then someone identifies, you know, a certain language skill or whatever it may be, and that person is then brought into that pipeline and developed. I mean, isn't that going to be your most loyal employee ever?
Okay, this is certainly a topic that I could go on and on about, and I'm sure those listening to this podcast as well are enjoying this conversation. But wait, there's more on the 26th, Dr. Janet.
Yes, we're very much looking forward to this 26th when we're going to have a coffee table discussion at the Houghton Hotel, and you can tell us more. So the first 70 staff from the NLC who reply RSVP to the email invitation from the company secretary will be able to be there at the event itself. Unfortunately, as a result of COVID restrictions, we can't accommodate more people, but the rest of the staff are invited to please take part virtually. Also, the NLC stakeholders will be able to log in virtually and take part in this day. We'll be exploring other topics such as bullying in the workplace, tribalism, things such as trust, what happens when trust is breached, and we're inviting fantastic speakers. Lebo Molax will be there, we'll be there. So please come and join us on the 26th.
Shalom will be there.
I can't wait. I can't wait, colleagues, for the 26th of May. Here's another platform that NLC has created for employees to engage with the speakers, for employees to engage with each other, but more importantly, for NLC to unpack how do we live these particular NLC policies. I can't wait for all the questions, and HCM is ready to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Well, that is it. Creating a respectful working environment on the 26th of May. I hope that you'll be able to join us. Of course, it will be streamed live on YouTube as well. And we'll be taking some of your comments during those conversations as well. Remember, the NLC is committed to achieving sustainable growth through the practice of good corporate governance, provision of excellent service, and sound regulatory practice. My name is Aldrin SAMPEAR. See you on the 26th.